power per revolution of the wheel. When you've got a two-cylinder, you've got a little bit of unevenness which will throw an engine into a slip. But these type of engine will work a train of 11 coaches out of a station on a wet rail, possibly without any slip at all, quicker than an electric train.
But the LMS was competing against a rival route to Southend.
All change here for electricity. Steam played its part for years on this line, but it could not meet modern demands for faster, cleaner service, economical working and more trains. For many years, smoke and steam hung over the trees and fields between Shenfield and Prittlewell. But now the clouds are clearing. The copper wire cable is ready to carry electric power from the new substations.
In 1945, London's commuter railways were in a terrible war-torn state. But the new nationalised industry, British Railways, soon began reconstruction and electrification. The ex-LNER line, running from Southend to Liverpool Street, was one of the first to get power cables. And by 1949, it already had a new electric train, the 306.
In comparison to what the people used to run on, these things were a breath of fresh air. Power-operated sliding doors, light and airy full-length compartments, luggage racks. It couldn't seat that many people. The total number of people on this three-coach train was only around about 166, and there was about 40 or 64 people in this compartment, but it was built for mass transit because you had the strap hangers for people to hang on to. Of course, as time went on, these became a bit dated, but the people used to still stand and wait for these rather than some of the newer stock because of the comfortable seating, the old bouncy seats, all sprung cushions.
The 306 could accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 90 seconds and was much quicker than the steamers on the old LMS route.
If you stood at one end of the vehicle and looked down here and it was doing full speed of about 65, 70 miles an hour, the sight of about, I don't know what we got here, about 60 odd people all bouncing in unison was quite hilarious to see them all bouncing from side to side as one. It's quite funny.
With electrification, you could safely sit down in a carriage and get out without having to sort of send your suit to the cleaners, which one had to do quite frequently on a steam train.
And white shirts got absolutely filthy. Cuffs were filthy, and collars.
Cuffs and collars would continue to get filthy on the old steam LMS route between Southend and Fenchurch Street because it had not been electrified after nationalisation. In fact, it had become BR's misery line.
Well, it was extremely poor, and of course people expected so much more. The war having been over, they expected the return of locomotives that would do the job, better rolling stock from somewhere, and that generally there would be some management attention given to a very important commuter line. In fact, this never materialised. I was lucky enough to live right overlooking the line, and being a student I had a fair amount of spare time, so I kept very accurate records of what was happening. The origin of the train either at Fenchurch Street, Tilbury or Shoebury. Perhaps we better now just wait for the 1340 out on its way to Shoebury. Then I entered how late it was running against the schedule. Here we are in August. Trains running 20 late, 10 late, 34, 27, 19, 19, 21, 18 late, 31 and so on and so on. So I started writing letters to the press. Mr. Henry Channon MP, the Council and the Railway Travellers Association should immediately combine to apply pressure on the apathetic railway company. It's the obvious solution to the present disgraceful situation. Yours sincerely, Barry K. Flaxman. And I believe that the letters which I was putting in the press at around about the age of 18 didn't read quite as if they were from somebody of my age, rather of an old disgruntled gentleman, perhaps in his 50s or 60s. And finally the mayor and town clerk said, well, you better come along with us to the railway executive and express your views and tell him how to do it better.
Barry Flaxman devised a new timetable so that fast trains weren't stuck behind slow ones, and trains no longer detoured beyond Southend to get their windows shut. It worked until 1961, when electricity finally reached the Misery line. The spearhead of electricity looked old-fashioned, with its slammed doors and compartments, but these 302s reduced the journey time from Southend to Fenchurch Street by up to 25 minutes. And the timetables changed again, so commuters could make all sorts of new connections.
First day of the electrification, we all travelled up together, and I think it was probably about the second or third day, a friend of mine who used to join us at Lee was on Lee Station, and she met Tony on the station, who didn't travel with us at the time. And she said to him, "You travelling up on your own?" So he said, "Yes." So she said, "Well, come along and join the crowd in our carriage."
I got in and found there was a seat available, and of course going up on those trains, on the commuter trains, we used to pass the time very often, a number of us, by playing cards. And my first introduction to Chris was basically asking her to move from a corner seat so that I could sit opposite the chaps I was going to play with, meeting with a smart refusal. Well, one thing led to another, as you will appreciate, and we started going out together.
And we were married about a year later, and we've now been married 32 years.
No complaints, I'm forced to say that, of course, and 2 grown-up daughters.
The Hordens had both retired by 1980, but the 302s soldiered on. Then in 1996, BR's old Misery line was privatised. The new owners, the LTS and Railtrack, have invested millions in electronic signals and to replace the 40-year-old 302s. Another new era has begun in suburbia, but it will only last if the lessons of the past are remembered.